This time on Jenny's Way, I am joined by Chris Burns. Chris is the originator and host of the podcast Hustle Nation, and of course, an entrepreneur. Chris tells us about how we can hustle without getting overwhelmed and burnt out, as well as the importance of crystal clear vision and how, as you grow, your vision evolves. Now, let's get to it. Hi, I want to welcome to Jenny's Way, Chris Burns. What a treat to have you on Jenny's Way. Chris Burns is the entrepreneur and a podcast host, fellow podcast host, and he's hosting Hustle Nation podcast. How did you get to Hustle Nation podcasting? Tell us, how do we can hustle without getting overwhelmed and burnt out? That's such an interesting concept. I love it.
Yeah, well, it depends on how much time you have, Jenny, because it could be a very long conversation. When I got roped into this through my business partner, it was, ultimately to start a leadership and sales development business. And when we met, I had said, you need to have a podcast and you should do this with your marketing and you should do that. And he said, well, why don't you start the podcast? And I said, well, Dustin, I am going to start a podcast anyways. Why? And he's like, well, why don't you just do it for me? And I said, what are you asking me to be your business partner? And, kind of in the undercurrent was he was wanting to hire me to be on a sales team for quite a while. And so we started talking and had some conversations. And I said, well, we became partners. And I said, well, let's start a podcast and let's call it Hustle Nation. And little did I know that at the time, there was this anti-hustle movement that had been happening, not just in the United States, but around the world. And, for the last decade, there had been entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs like Gary Vaynerchuk and others who had told people, the path to being successful is hustle. And what that meant specifically was you have to work 60 to 70 hours a week. You have to sacrifice your social life, maybe friendships, relationships along with that. You sacrifice your health by not eating, not sleeping, ultimately grinding, doing the things that most people don't want to do. And there may be some truth to that. But we've always believed that you can hustle without doing those things. In fact, if you do those things, it's not really hustle. It's you being in the hamster wheel and eventually burning out. And so we created a framework where hustle means something very different to people. It is a lot of different things, and I'll give you it at a very high level, and we can dive into it deeper if you'd like. But it stands for something. It's an acronym at Hustle Leadership Network, and that is H for hard work, U for unrelenting, S for smarter, not just harder, because again, you don't have to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week and not take care of yourself. T for taking chances, so to take some calculated risk. L is learning from others, where, ultimately to get better, you have to prioritize yourself and the opportunities to learn and get better. And then E, enjoy the process. And you have to have fun along the way, because if you don't, you're going to be in the hamster wheel and you're going to burn yourself out. And so we ultimately help people do that. We help them learn to work harder, not just smarter, but to the point to where you can stack daily victories and stack monthly victories to win the year without the burnout.
That's great. Can we start with fun? I want to start with the last letter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's start with fun.
Yeah. What's interesting about... Go ahead.
What did you find the most challenging with that model?
I think for me, and like many entrepreneurs, the hardest part is creating a crystal clear vision. And that is the first thing that we do with our clients. And oftentimes when we're making decisions for new things, new techniques, new tactics, new ways of marketing or growing our business, we always go back and we say, does this align with our vision? And I want to tell you a quick story. I was coaching an entrepreneur recently, and he has a podcast and a show, and he generates close to $1 million in revenue, but he does it all himself. And you'd think that at the surface level, this individual has it all figured out. He's highly successful. And he is. He's doing really well, but he's hit very much a glass ceiling, as we'll call it. And I finally asked him, I'm like, I'm really struggling to understand where the problem is. And he couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. And as a typical coach goes, you ask questions to get to that point. And I said, what is it that you really want? And he said, well, I think I want more downloads. I think I'd like to have more sales, and I would like more success. And I said, but what does any of that mean? And he couldn't quantify it. And I said specifically, though, are you making this up? Because if you can see me as you're listening to this, his head looked up at the ceiling. He was looking at the floor and on the walls. And I said, it looks like to me you're making this up as I'm asking you these questions. And he said, yeah, I guess I am. And I said, well, if you don't know what your vision is, and I said, I'm not talking about your 5-year plan or your 3-year plan. What is it you want to achieve personally and professionally this year? He didn't know. And so we helped him get crystal clear on what it was he wanted, because this is how it works for us. And this is how it works for most of our clients, is that if you don't have a roadmap, if I'm going to go from Appleton, Wisconsin to Miami, Florida, I've got an idea of where it is. But if I can't plot that out, if I don't have a plan for where I'm going to stop and sleep, where I'm going to stop and eat, where maybe how often I need to get gas and how long it's going to take me to get there, it's not going to be a very enjoyable trip, right?
It's not.
And so ultimately, I'm probably going to get lost along the way, may have some problems. That is a long 28, 30-hour trip that most people don't take unplanned. But that's what we do with our business. And for some reason, we just think, oh, I'll figure it out. Well, you don't take a road trip and figure it out. You don't start a business and figure it out. A professional NFL or NBA coach doesn't go into a game or a playoff game and say, we're just going to figure it out as we go. You have a roadmap. And based on that roadmap, you know how to attack what lies ahead. And that is how you gauge success. And if you go into anything in life without a roadmap, what would you expect, right? How do you know where you are or how to get to where you want to be? And not just the destination, but on a road trip, it's what is point A to B, and then B to C and C to D. And by the way, there's a lot more stops on that roadmap if you're making a cross-country journey or running a business or starting a business. And so clarity of vision for us was the hardest part. And by the way, our business has evolved a lot in the last 2.5 years.
I was just going to say, just because you have a vision at the beginning, it doesn't mean it's not going to just change a little bit as you grow, as you learn, as you figure out things. But at the beginning, you need to have an, as I call it, initial roadmap. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to start somewhere. And that is one of the most beautiful parts of a strategy or a plan or even a vision statement of any sort, is that if you really double down on the L, learning from others or taking chances, is that you're going to be wiser and you're going to learn from your failures, right? Or your missteps. And as part of that, you're going to say, yeah, I'm more in tune with my customers. I'm more in tune with what works or what doesn't. And because of that, you should want to evolve. Because by the way, if you're not evolving, things get stale. And in marketing and in business, consumers become very immune to hearing the same message over and over, the same type of content, the same copy. And so that's why you see the biggest brands in the world always evolving, always having new campaigns and new products and new marketing to stay relevant. And so there is nothing wrong with evolving, even if you're successful or not successful, you should be evolving.
Yeah, that's all great points. Let's go back and talk about failures. What failures means to you?
Yeah, well, I think it means a lot of different things to different people. And it's funny you asked that question, because I did my second audition for a TEDx talk last night as we record this.
Nice.
And as part of it, I talked about how you can buy back your time by being perfectly imperfect or imperfectly perfect, however you want to put that. And one of the things that I defined in there was sure. One of the things I defined was success. And it's interesting when you talk about success or failure, everybody has their own definition. And I say this a lot.
Absolutely.
I knew plenty of even my siblings, but plenty of people that I was friends with, and their family deemed their level of success in academics as A's and B's. And some exclusively, like my wife, she was an A student. Anything less than maybe even a B plus was probably a failure.
That's me.
Where if you take me, and we're very much a yin and a yang, by the way, if I didn't apply myself, I got D's, and got an occasional F. When I applied myself, the best I was probably going to get was a B. But I was on average, a C student. I was told by my guidance counselor, why would you bother wanting to, you're not going to make it to college. Just take that off your radar. And I had kind of a like, F you middle finger mentality. I was like, I'm going to show you. You can't tell me what I can and can't do.
Mm-hmm.
But my point with all this is that some parents would say, if you want to be a C student like Chris, that's a failure. And guess what? If you fast forward 30 years, I graduated from college. I became an adjunct social media marketing professor. I've published 2 books. I've been a paid keynote speaker. That is my definition of success. Have I made $1 million? No, not yet. I haven't reached a fraction of my career goals. But there's a lot of people that were a lot smarter than me and got a lot better grades that are a lot further behind in their career goals. So I try not to compare myself to others, but I try to compare myself to where I was a year ago. So whether we talk about success or failure, you have to have a conversation about both, because what I deem as success or what I deem as failure could be very different from what you used on that scale to measure either or. And I take this conversation into my parenting as well, because I really try hard to get my kids to be the best version of themselves. Compare yourself only to what you were yesterday or yesteryear, and continue to get better 1% every day. And that's success. And if you're not getting better, 1% better every week or every month, because we have to give ourselves grace at times. We have bad weeks, bad months, and sometimes there's nothing we can do about it. But 1% better is success to me.
That's great. And celebrate.
And focus on the success, not the failure. That's really my big takeaway for folks is if you focus on the failure part, guess what? That's what's going to happen.
And celebrate small victories along the way. People forget that.
100%.
Yeah, that's how you get yourself motivated. And even if you think about it, we as a human, especially in the last, I would say, 10, 15 years, we all want that instant gratification. But it's not about that. It's about being able to enjoy the journey and see the vision, like we started the conversation earlier. You have a vision, enjoy the journey, whatever is that you need to do. However, if you get to the point, if you've been at some business for a while and you have given your very best, maybe you need to have a different direction with your business. Because if you're not enjoying your journey, that even if you eventually get to your results, what is it going to be like to you? It's not going to feel good anyways, because you struggle every single day. So I think a lot of people forget that. And I love how you said you have to see failure and success on is it a failure or is it success? What is your definition? So everybody have their own definition. And my definition and yours is probably going to be different. It sounds like it may be the same. To me, it's not about $1 million. It's about making impact and inspiring people and allow them to see there is another way they can make a difference in their life, the life of their family and communities, but they just have to figure out what is it they want to do. Get back to what you were saying, that clear vision, at least initial clear vision, because that may change with time, but we expect that because we're evolving, economy evolving, AI comes in. Speaking of AI, what is your take on AI? Do you think it's coming to get your job?
Yeah, I love AI. There are people who think that, and I feel bad for people who think that because it's not true. Now, could that happen in 50 years?
Possibly.
Yeah, very well could happen. But I can't worry about what it's going to be like then. And as someone who's only 42 years old, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be working at that point, so I don't have to worry about that. But AI is only as good as you make it. So that's one thing that I want to tell people. And the other thing is that if you're afraid of AI, one thing is you can't run a business or you can't work scared. You just can't be scared. You have to embrace it and leverage it to your advantage. So if you're like, well, I'm not ready for that. I don't like it. Well, guess what? You've already been using AI and you just don't know it. There are plenty of tools in the world that exist today, whether it be Google Home, Amazon Alexa, and list goes on and on and on. Grammarly Premium, Chat GPT. There are so many tools out there that have had AI built in for years that you just didn't even know existed. And it's only now gotten to the point to where it's become a kind of a household name and a household product. But I use it almost every single day. And I'll just give you some idea of how I use it. I don't use it to create content like some people may. I use it to save time or to buy my time back. And I have some framework that I use with my podcast, which is I use it to transcribe my podcast. I then use it to help me make a podcast description. I then have some other framework where it'll help me with titles. It'll help me with tags. It'll help me converting it into a newsletter, which I do for LinkedIn purposes. And it probably saves me about 90 minutes to 2 hours every time I produce an episode. Full disclosure, I don't take exactly what it gives me and publish it. I try to put my own unique spin on it because I don't exactly know where it's getting all of its information, and I don't want to take credit for something that I didn't 100% produce. And so,
For sure.
to me, it is a launch pad to help me buy back time. It is an opportunity to create maybe better content because I'm not a great writer. I'm not the most creative person in the world. And in this case, it is amazing what it can do. Now, there are other people like I know who are building bots using AI and putting them on their website. And they're allowing the bot to communicate with a customer until a sales rep can come on and take the conversation over. And it's not only saving them time and money, but it's making them millions of dollars. And so there are a lot of ways to use it that are very positive and very good. And I would just say that, if you're not fully on board, investigate, learn, discover why, rather than say it's not for me, we're never going to use it, we're scared of what it could cause with issues. Look at how it could help you. Look at the positive rather than the negative. And I think that, in a year from now, we're going to see AI even better. We're going to see more people using it. And there's going to be a lot of people saying, I wish I would have jumped on this sooner.
That's great. There's a couple of points that you mentioned. Look at why. That's always important. And also overall, as a mindset standpoint, looking at positive, not a negative, not just in business, overall in life, and see what can I get positive with that circumstances or that situation. What can I learn? Even though it may feel negative overall, look for some positivity. And that will help you with business. Maybe you have difficult clients, or maybe you had some problems at home, kids, spouse, sister, brother. Things happen, it's life. We just have to stay focused on our vision and stay positive. And speaking of which, how do you keep yourself grounded? How do you not allow your body to get into anxiety or worry and fear spin and just start freaking out like a lot of business people? I know you've been in business for a long time, so it's probably mostly will apply for people just starting out because it's difficult when you start out. You don't have your system in place yet. Maybe you don't have your team yet. So it could be even more overwhelming. But what are your advice for people with that?
Well, there's a lot of things, and I'll try to keep it kind of brief and simple. Number one has always been gratitude. Just being grateful for what you do have and remind yourself that, as much as you may not be where you want, as much as you may have fallen short on a lot of goals, there's always going to be someone who's better than you, bigger, faster, stronger, wealthier, whatever. There's always going to be people on the opposite side of that. And so you have to remember, look, I'm better than where I was a year ago, a month ago, 2 years ago, whatever. And so gratitude is something I practice a lot. I also tell a lot of my clients that one of the things that I've done that's helped me a lot tremendously is that I don't feel the need to scroll aimlessly through social media anymore. I'm a huge proponent of it. I've been in marketing for over 20 years. But what I tell people is that I use social media to produce. I just don't use social media to consume much. And the reason being is that, when I fall into a rabbit hole on Twitter or Facebook, it's the rabbit hole of negativity. It's the politics and current events and the fear that comes in that takes over, that prevents you from sleeping well at night. And there are plenty of things in the world today that could cause that potentially. And so I've distracted myself in other ways. And one of them has been reading.
Yeah.
I've read 14 books already in the calendar year of 2024.
That's pretty
and
amazing.
I'll tell you what is, I had this conversation with someone recently, and I said, look, I sleep better at night. I feel more tired. So when I go to bed, like I'm asleep in a few minutes. And someone said to me, like, I don't have the time to do that. And I said, what do you mean? What are you doing? It's like, I go to bed at 9:00 and I sit in bed for an hour. I'm like, well, why couldn't you read for an hour every night then? And I caught the person making an excuse, and she's like, I just need to change my behaviors. And I said, you're making an excuse for your behaviors now. It's almost like you're justifying, well, I need to. Do you want to? Do you want to get better is the question I would ask. Do you want to sleep better? Do you want to have less anxiety and less stress? What I've found, and I'm going to kind of bring this full circle in a minute, is that by reading, I've become hungrier to learn. I always thought like no one hustled more than me. No one tried harder than me. But now that I'm reading, I realize how much I don't know. I thought I knew. I was so cocky and so arrogant mentally when I was a kid.
Way.
Yeah. And the more I learn, the more I become hungry and thirsty, because the more I realize I don't know. I wish, like, one of my biggest regrets now, and I would read on average one book a year for the last 20 some years. That is my biggest regret, is that I didn't take up reading sooner, because I'm absorbing so much information like a sponge. I'm so inspired that I'm encouraging other people to do it. And I think it has a massive impact on your mental health, whether you have mental health issues or not, because you sleep better at night. You're prioritizing learning, which makes you better. It can then change the way you lead in your business, change the way you interact with your family. And more importantly, the way I'm going to wrap up this part of the question or the answer is that I believe that as an entrepreneur, to pull yourself away from everything, to get to be the best version of yourself, is you have to be selfish. Because being selfish allows you to be selfless. I'll give this one example, which is my business partner has about 150, 170 employees in his company. He has approximately 200 cups to fill. It's a lot. And the only way he can do that is by filling his cup. And I've said to him, you have to be selfish. You have to make the time. And for me, that is playing golf with my friends. I have some friends that play golf. It's an oasis for me. It's something I love to do. I love to be outside when it's warm and sunny. It's just fun. I also like to work out. I like to get a massage. There are a few things that allows me to decompress, de-stress, and gives me back the energy that I need to be the best version of me, so that, guess what? I can be a better spouse. I can be a better dad. I can be a better leader with my clients. I can be a better friend with my friends. And when I do that, I'm energetic. I'm fun. I'm funny-er, not very funny to begin with. And
really?
Those are the things that allow me to shine. But if I don't prioritize my sleep and my health and do all those things to fill my cup, I'm a piece of junk. I suck. I am not very good. I have brain fog. And so if you want to have the opportunity to shine, to be the best version of you, it is just a matter of being selfish. Fill your cup so that you can fill the cup of others, because we all have cups to fill. Even if you're like, well, I only have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or I don't really have a family. Believe it or not, you got a lot of cups to fill. You got to fill yours first.
Oh my God, that's so good. I totally agree with that. If I don't do stuff for myself, take time for myself, for me, it's also exercise. I like music, so I love to dance. So that'll be Zumba, and I try different classes at the gym. I also do, I have to do in the morning or in the evening. I have some routines, like I do affirmations. Sometimes I do a short meditation, but not very long. And I do it depending on the day. But you have, like you said, you have to take time for yourself and fill your cup, because otherwise you're not going to have anything left to give. It's people.
You'll burn out.
Yeah, people feel like you're being selfish. No, it's self-love or self-care, however you want to see. You have to love yourself so you can love and give energy to people around you. It's so important. And then you'll be more energetic. You can clearly think, and you can be more fun or funnier, however you want to see it. Speaking of fun, I know you always saying like marketing can be easy and fun. How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I wrote a book about it. It's called Marketing So Easy It's Fun Again. Just launched on Amazon
Congrats.
the last week.
Yay.
Thank you. So I'll tell you a story about how that came about. And for me, when I was in college, there was no such thing as digital marketing. Social media had just been out maybe for a year. And literally the only digital things people did was they had a website and maybe they did some email marketing. And I became mostly self-taught. It still works, by the way. But I had made a lot of my own content and I was never strategic. And I later realized that when I worked for an agency that part of the reason that my marketing was only mediocre at best was because it had no direction. I had a vision in my head, but I didn't have a plan or a strategy. So it was based on what I liked.
So what's the difference between the vision and the strategy?
Well, a vision is what do I want to achieve?
Sure. A dream,
and
more
it is
like
identifying.
A dream? More like a dream.
Yes.
Somewhat.
It's identifying and writing down what it is that you want. Now, your business needs a vision. You need a vision statement. And I'm not talking about the vision statement on your website. Totally different thing. And then once you can crystallize what it is you want, or maybe what not only you want, but need in your business, those things cascade into a strategy. And so when I got strategic, I noticed that things changed, that results started to happen. And in the agency world, my career kind of jumped where people started asking me to do some public speaking. And they said, Chris, you're just so knowledgeable about this. So one time I was speaking on strategy, social media strategy to be specific. And the organizer of the event said, Chris, how easy can you make it? And they're like, I know you're really good. You talk a lot of technical stuff, but you need to make this as simple as possible. And I said, okay, well, I can get it down to one screen. And she's like, well, can you help people create a one-page strategy? And I was like, oh, crap. And first of all, I felt like an imposter because I wasn't strategic. So I got it down to like 10 things. And I created a template in Word or something. And I put it on in my slide deck. And after the event, people came up to me, dozens of people. Like that was unbelievable. It was very thought-provoking that how you could make marketing so easy. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then people started asking me, can I download that? Where do I get a copy of that document? And then I started doing that presentation at other workshops. And it hit me within a few weeks that, holy crap, people want easy. I thought I had to impress people by making it more complicated than it really was, like most agencies do. They make it so complicated that you feel like you have to hire them. And I realized I'm like, agencies charge too much. They're too expensive. They're not transparent. And they don't make things easy. Why don't you make things easy? And I always said to people, I'm like, I want to make it so easy and so good that you're going to want to fire me. You're going to want to fire me in a few months because you're going to be able to figure it out and do it yourself. And people love that about me. So I went off and I started my own agency, my own business. And I realized that the strategy work that I was doing for clients, I'd come back 6 months later and they weren't using it. It was a 30-page strategy. I thought, oh, they're going to be so impressed with this massive document. It's going to knock their socks off. And it didn't work. They weren't using it. And I asked why. And they're like, oh, it's just so much. And I even felt stress and anxiety from all this stuff in this document. So why would I use it? So I pared it down to 15 pages. Still too complicated. I then pared it down to like 8 or 9 pages. Yeah, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. But even then, they're like, we don't have enough people. And I'm like, I'm making it easy. And it finally hit me. It's like, Chris, you're not making it easy. You're making it complicated. And so I said, I've always had a really hard time introducing myself. And I said, well, what makes me different? If I'm a marketing agent or marketing consultant, whatever I am, what makes me different? if ultimately I'm doing what everyone else is doing?
That's true. Yeah.
And so I finally realized that I had to market myself. And I also realized it was really hard if what I was doing wasn't moving the needle as much as I thought it could and should. So I said, Chris, what do you do? And I said, well, I teach people, I inspire people. How can I introduce myself and my business and offer something that is so profound, so thought-provoking, and so question-provoking that as a byproduct, I can position myself to be in a class of its own? And not because I'm the best or the smartest or the most experienced. I don't think I'm any of those things. So I finally came up with a tagline for my LinkedIn profile, and it became part of my service and my DNA. And it was, I make marketing so easy it's fun again, so easy you'll have no excuses. And then I decided, well, I'm like, shit, I need to make this a book. This became part of my strategy service. And then now it's part of the DNA and what we do with our Hustle Leadership Network. And is that if we make things easy, they're fun. And when they're easy and fun, it's because we're generating results. So what I said with my book is that, look, marketing, and this is true in leadership, doesn't have to be difficult, time-consuming, or expensive to be effective. You don't need a massive budget. You don't need the best videographer. You don't need the best content. You just need to know what works and what doesn't. You need to focus your time on the things that generate an ROT and an ROI rather than doing the stupid things that we do over and over and over and just expect different results. And so it hit me a few years ago that, yeah, we make things more difficult than what we need to.
Really?
And when I've had success,
really?
My success has only been when I've made things easy. And I always thought I had to overcomplicate it to impress people. Because guess what? I was trying to live up to other people's standards. I was trying to achieve that perfect thing. And that's why I had so much failure. That's why I fell short in my life so much. Because I was comparing myself to this unidealistic standard. And then I realized I get to define my own success and failure.
So true.
But if I also made things simple, which I thought was not the way to go, I'm like, darn, I wish I caught on to this sooner. So I wrote a book about it in an effort to help other people achieve the same thing.
That's so great. So what would be the top 3 then? You have what, 10, 15? It was on that one pager?
For a strategy, I think the number one is that, and I talk a lot about this as I ask people, is what is it that you want to achieve? And so you have to write that down, is what are we after this year? So you got to get crystal clear. Otherwise, everything you put into a strategy is made up. And I found that too, when I'm helping clients or coaching them through it, they just randomly pull things out of the sky. Like, oh, well, how many sales do you want this year? Well, I want 150,000. Oh. Where'd you get that number? Well, it's like 20% growth. And I Googled it and it said, yeah, it's probably 20% growth is pretty realistic. I'm like, well, that's 100% made up. How likely is it that you're going to achieve a made up goal? Well, I mean, no, that's made up. And so I try to get past that. Number one would be, if we're talking about marketing, I would tell you have to audit. You have to audit yourself in business. You have to audit your marketing. Because if you don't do that, you truly don't know where you are. You don't know what's working and what's not. You don't know what the competitive landscape looks like either. So why would you expect anything positive to come out of a strategy if it's all guesses and all arbitrary? Because most strategies, like 85% of them, are 100% arbitrary. It's like, oh, we put time into a strategy session, but everything in there is just random made up stuff. So that'd be number one. Number two is that you want to give yourself some goals. Now, you're like, Chris, this is so simple and so easy. Again, goals are mostly made up and arbitrary, but the information from the audit cascades into the goals. And these should be difficult enough to give you just a tiny bit of stress and anxiety, but also not too high to where they're unrealistic or not too low to where you're going to achieve them in the first couple months. And the other key with goals is that you really only probably want 2. For most of us, we're solopreneurs or we're entrepreneurs with a small budget, small team. So don't put too much stress and anxiety saying like, I'm going to have 5 goals. We don't have enough bandwidth for that. That's just not realistic. Now, maybe you have a goal for this quarter or 2. Great. That's all you need. That is more than enough anxiety to give yourself. And then number 3, I would say, is what is your implementation plan? Because even if the goals and the strategy isn't made up, let's say you do the audit and you do everything I tell you to do, all of this will be for nothing. It will all have been a colossal waste of your time and energy and stress if you don't have a plan to implement all of the stuff. And that is the second biggest problem I see with so many businesses, entrepreneurs, marketers, is that they're like, oh, we got a plan. Okay, great. How do you implement? I'm like, well, we don't know. I don't know. So you have to really master your calendar. You have to really master your time. And you have to have roles and responsibilities. Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? How are we going to get this? How are we going to get that? And so people need to be aligned strategically. People need to have calendars that are open and visible. And then what is the accountability? So who's going to hold me accountable? How am I going to hold you accountable? Or are we going to communicate to make sure that these things get done each and every week? And so give a copy of this to your spouse, to your friend, to your business partner, to your team, and make sure that everybody's aligned, because when you have multiple people in the process holding you accountable, shit gets done. And that is a beautiful thing. And guess what? That when things get done, there's no more stress. There's very little stress and anxiety. It gets suppressed like 50%. And so sometimes that is the biggest roadblock for people, is saying, I got to be transparent with my calendar, and I have to be responsible, and I have to be held accountable. I've seen some high leaders that back out of that, and they continue to find themselves in that hamster wheel because they're not willing to take that little small risk, because someone might call me out because I wanted to have an off day, or someone might call me out because I missed a deadline. Well, so what? That's what they're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do for them too. That's what loving teammates do. And so those are the three big things that I think are really important. Now, they're very much Captain Obvious and elementary, but you get past that, you will have success guaranteed.
That's so good. I like how you said accountability. And I get to hear it over and over again that implementation is usually what's lacking. Especially people will take the courses or classes or go to summits or conferences. They get all the awesome information, then they don't even try to implement one thing. So implementation, why do you think that we as humans just like, oh, that's great, but we don't implement? What is it about us? I don't think it's laziness, is it?
I mean, for some people it may be. I also believe that there are a lot of distractions. If we're going to be fair and we're going to just, try to be empathetic with what's happening in the world today, I think that we get distracted very easily. It could be our family, spouse, kids, could be our phone, social media. I mean, spam calls can be distracting. You're in the middle of something, and you get the spam call, and it's like silence. That can cause you to lose track of your thoughts. Yeah. And there's so much happening in the world today with all the technology. We've got smart stoves and ovens. We've got smart things in our house, and we've got things are pinging us every day.
Yeah.
In addition to TVs and phones and whatnot. And so we have to remind ourselves. And I think one of the ways to do that is, well, number one, taking notes, making sure that you're writing stuff down, serving as a reminder, putting reminders and calendar invites in your phone. So oftentimes with my wife, it's, adding her to calendar invite, and thing that may not be as relevant to her, just so she knows what's happening in my life, so that she's not like, I shouldn't expect him to be home, or I shouldn't expect him to pick up the kids if he has X. So that prevents a future distraction from happening. Or me forgetting to tell her something.
Too.
I also have started, we created a journal. We call it the Hustle Planner. And it's basically a daily planner that allows you to not lose sight of your goals, of your vision, of your direction, of your daily victories, so that you can stay in a moment of gratitude, that you can remember to practice the things that fill up your cup, so that you can fill up the cup of others. And it's so easy to do, but yet so many of us don't do it. And some of the most successful people I know, they're doing things like you said, meditation, journaling. They're using a daily planner. And it's like so simple, but yet if that's what the most successful people are doing, why wouldn't I want to do that? Why wouldn't I want to improve my success rate or my revenue by just 1% per day? Because the compounding interest on that is huge.
I think journaling is important. I don't always do it, but I have talked with a lot of successful people that do it daily. I don't do it daily, not yet. I do other things. However, I feel like journaling is one of the ways that you reflect where you at. You get to ponder to see, okay, am I feel like I'm going the direction I want to? Is there time to reevaluate? So I feel like journaling is important. It works for a lot of people. Do you journal on a daily?
Not on a daily basis, but there are a lot of things that I do on a daily basis that it would, to me, is the equivalent. One is I'm either on a podcast as a guest, like we are today. I host a podcast, and I get to express my thoughts and my feelings, and oftentimes they're affirmations. So as I'm saying things out loud, or as I hear someone say something, it is a chance for me to validate my feelings or something that I've learned and share my gratitude. I also will share a lot of those things on social media. And to me, that is a way to document thoughts and feelings and share with the effort to help, empower, inspire, educate other people. And so I have a lot of ways that I can do that. I also use a daily journal or daily planner, which helps me keep my daily objectives, my daily schedule and things in front of me. And so for me, I'm writing blog posts, I'm writing social media posts, and that is very much an extension of what it would be if I had a journal. And so I've got a lot of ways I can put my thoughts and my energy and those affirmations out to the world.
You heard it here first from Chris Burns. It doesn't actually have to be daily writing in your journal. It's expressing yourself, expressing your emotion, whether it will be writing a post on social, writing a blog, going on podcasts. Yep. So you get to hear yourself, your opinions. That's how you reflect. So there's more than one way of journaling that is not per se journaling. I love it. That's a great point. But as long as you express and reflect, there's more than one way to do it. So that was awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so.
How do you feel like storytelling affect brand awareness and brand strengths? What are your thoughts on storytelling?
Yeah, so there's a lot there. Storytelling is one of the most important parts of marketing, specifically digital marketing, and of course, social media. I'll say this. So when I look at websites and marketing, I don't really enjoy reading. I don't enjoy reading most websites for a couple of reasons. Not because I don't like reading, and it's not because people don't want to read. I do think there's merit to that. People would rather watch than read. But the problem is that we get so focused on talking about us. We get so focused of, look at me, we're the best in market, we're the best in class. And, we started our business in 1989, and then we moved in 1992, and we acquired ABC Business in 1994. That's boring. That is your history, and people don't want to read that. What they want to hear is your story, which is a form of storytelling. They want to hear the ups and downs. They want to hear the adversity. They want to hear how you overcame, or how, a building may have burned down, and then the adversity of the support from the community and your employees helped you get through. And if it wasn't without, this miracle, you wouldn't be where you are today. We connect with people. We don't connect with businesses per se. But when you're able to introduce the human side of your business, when you're able to open up and become vulnerable and tell your story or stories, all of a sudden people become interested because now I build a connection with someone within the business. So I always ask this question when I speak on stage, which is, raise of hands, who feels intimately connected to a business? Very few hands go up. And when they do, I always pick on those folks and I say, what is the business? And they say Apple, Patagonia, businesses like that, maybe Subaru, in all valid cases. And someone said, well, Subaru, they've got a really big commitment to the planet and to animals. Okay, fair. So you have an affinity for animals. I do. Okay. Well, is there something specifically that you feel tied to the company? No, I just really like the cause. And I said, okay, well, you're then not connected to the company. And they say, well, I guess. Someone said, well, Apple, I like their simplicity of their products, and I've always used them, and I'm a big advocate. I said, okay, well, what's your connection to the company? Well, I don't have one. I said, okay, my point exactly. Now, you might feel an affinity for the company, but it's not until you start to talk about, well, what businesses am I intimately connected to? Well, Locally, Chris, there's a jewelry store, and I bought my wife's engagement ring from the jeweler who owns the company. What he did was he allowed me to take a couple pieces of jewelry back to my home so that my parents could look at the jewelry and select which one they thought would be best for my wife. He gave me a discount on this watch that I bought, and he sent me a card and asked me how, my daughter's surgery went. Now you're connected to the jeweler, not the business. Why? Because he showed that he cared about you. He told you his story about his business. He made it personal. And we are connected to people. And it's only when you start to learn about someone else's story or tell your story, and the ups and the downs too. I don't want to just hear all the good stuff. I feel so connected to that business that it's like, I don't even think about going anywhere else to buy my jewelry because I have this intimate connection with the jeweler. And that's where small local businesses or coaches and consultants have a disproportionate advantage. You give someone this white glove service, you create thought leadership content, and you talk about you. I can talk about all of the failures I've had, like I did with, grades and business. And people can say, and I say this on stage, I can tell you what works and what doesn't. I've posted 2,000 short form videos in the last 2 years, most of which I can tell you what works and what doesn't, because I've seen firsthand what doesn't work. And I've seen firsthand what does work. And so I'm a guinea pig. And when people start to hear that, they're like, he's valid. He's right. He's done this. He's a practitioner. I believe in Chris. He's not just out to get my business. He really wants to help people. And all of a sudden, when I start to talk about my experience teaching at the university level or coaching or my own business, people start to say, I want to hear more from this guy. You build up this know, like, and trust factor with your personal brand. And storytelling is just the foundation of what you should be doing with all of your social media, all of your video content, all of your digital marketing. Don't make it about the business. Make it about the story within the business.
I always tell my clients and friends, it's about your why. Why people want to know why you do what you do. They want to know why you fail. They want to know how you overcome all the failures, how you get to be where you're at now. They want to know. It's a curiosity. They love stories because story is exciting. That's how we learn through stories as little children. What your mother and your dad was reading you? Bedside stories, right? That's how we learn. And that's how exciting it is when you hear the stories. You get to see that people's lives weren't always easy. And you can't expect that. There will be bumps in the road. And some people will be stopped by those bumps, where the others will figure out a way how to get to whatever door. It may be a little crack open. They're going to keep pushing that door and they'll get in that door. And the other people will see a failure as a stopping ground. It's like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And why? What would differentiate those two type of people? What are the characteristics you would say from one type of personality that say, okay, I had so many failures, I can't do it anymore. And others, they're just relentless. They're just like, I don't care. I'm going to keep going. What makes a difference? What is it? Some people stop, the others keep going.
Yeah. I think there's a couple things. People fear what's called the twin thieves, the fear of judgment and the fear of failure. And these are things like imposter syndrome. And for men, I call it the little man voice, or the little woman voice for women.
Little girl's voice.
And then you have the big man voice and the big woman voice, which is telling you all the positive things, all the positive affirmations that you're good enough, you're smart enough, you're strong enough, you're capable. And so we have these fears as well, which are always, what are my parents going to say? What are my friends going to think? Well, what if I fail? And we fear not being successful. And so often we're not even failing, but because we don't take action, we feel like we felt, and it's only a feeling, because we haven't taken action. And so sometimes we are successful just because we've taken action, but sometimes we feel a failure because we haven't done anything. And so the big thing that I tell people is, what's the worst that could happen? So long as you're not leveraging your marriage or your bank account or your job or your health, it a lot of times the worst that can happen is what? It just doesn't work.
Then you try something else.
So if you're taking smart, calculated risks, like I've always believed in bootstrapping my businesses. If it didn't work out, I'm not out $1 million. I'm not in debt. I'm not bankrupt. I'm not mortgaging my marriage or my house or my family or any of those things that are very sacred to me. And so I think that's a big part of it. But also, what's the best that could happen? What is possible? And that's where I want people to think, because if, much like in golf and other sports, if you visualize something negative happening, slicing the ball into the woods, guess what? That's probably what's going to happen. But if you say, oh, what could happen in a good way? What am I capable of? Guess what? You're going to focus on that and you're going to be more motivated to do it. And as I say, most things in life are easier than we make them. If you make it so easy it's fun again, you're not going to have any excuses. You're going to be successful. And so that's the thing is, if you make it easy, you're never going to stop back and say, I wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda. I'm just not going to do that. So you have to fight those twin thieves every single day.
Twin thieves. I love that.
That's a book. I can't take credit for that. Our friends Steve Jones and Lucas Jaden wrote that book. That is their thing, not mine. But I like to talk about it because it is, to me, very profound.
What's the other couple of books? I imagine that would be one of your top books to read for people to read. What other books you think will be?
Yeah, I love reading. One of the, I think, profound books that changes the way we think, because we are creatures of habit and we don't often change the way we think and we operate, is called Think Again by Adam Grant. And it's all about thinking, but then rethinking, changing the way you think. If you've always done it this way, well, what would happen if you did it the other way? And he tells a lot of stories about how people did things differently and they kind of trailblazed and it became the way. And so that's number one. Business Made Simple by Donald Grant is an interesting book. And I did a book review on my YouTube channel about it. And I said that it was 20 pages in and I literally almost tossed the thing in the trash. And it wasn't because he's not a great writer. He is. He's amazing. He's very established and very successful. However, it was so simple and so elementary that I just said, I don't need this book. And then the next day I picked it up again and I read the next few pages and I thought, oh, well, it's surprisingly better. And the next thing I know, it's probably inching in on my top 10 books of all time because he has a very similar framework to me, which is make things simple, make things easy, have a framework, have a strategy, have a plan. And that became a quick favorite of mine. And let's see if I can give you one more. I keep an app up called Goodreads. And Goodreads is a way for you to track all the books that you've read, kind of rating them, because if you're a bookie like me, at least that's what I call myself, a non-traditional bookie, not a gambler bookie. People always ask, hey, what did you read? What did you like? What did you read? What did you like? And to me, those are a couple of big ones.
Okay, great. What's next for Chris?
What's next for Chris? I would say that 2024 is a year of clarity and focus, and I'm really getting locked in on one business. For years, I was spread very thin, doing a lot of different things. And this year, we're really focused on the Hustle Leadership Network, which is a leadership and sales development program or business. We do corporate sales, corporate engagements, helping businesses create clarity and connection to the result. And so often that is helping them create a sales culture of hustle without the burnout. So often it is, how do we achieve so much more without burning out our people more, without getting them stressed, full of anxiety? How do we just get to that next level and then the level above that? And so many of them just aren't crystal clear on their strategy or their vision or any of those things. And frankly, I mean, it's embarrassing to say, but the whole system is just, it's so easy and so simple that when businesses invest in it, they say, I can't believe it was this easy, and I can't believe we didn't do this sooner.
Well, to sum up our conversation, easy and simple doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to work. Have a clear vision, have a plan, implementation plan, and make sure you have an accountability partners so they can keep you accountable. And then keep learning, keep growing, and never give up. There is a way. If you want to do something, you choose. That's what you're here for. That is your mission and purpose. You're going to find a way. Just keep going. And it was amazing conversation. Chris and I can talk for another hour because it's just awesome.
Yeah.
However, probably anything you want to add will be great, or otherwise we'll tell people how to reach you.
I think that's a wrap. That was an awesome conversation. Thank you for having me. If you liked anything I had to say, my book is on Amazon. It's Marketing So Easy, It's Fun Again. You can reach me a couple different ways. I've got a personal website that people find me for speaking and other types of engagements. It's iamchrisburns.com. And then our hustle business is hustleleaders.com. Podcast is hustlenationpodcast.com. And that's on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find it. We produce weekly episodes and a lot of stuff like this. Thoughtful, educational, inspirational.
That's great.
Thanks for having me.
That's so great. Thanks for coming. Amazing conversation. We'll be in touch. Let's support Chris.
Thank you.
Chris reminds us not to compare ourselves to others as long as we're 1% better every day. That is success. Because you see, our definition of what is success and failure is different from anyone else's. We're all unique, and that is our superpower. Thanks for joining in this time, and please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, see you.